Not all states are celebrating Juneteenth today. Only 29 states and D.C. officially recognize the federal holiday. And some states who have opted out of the holiday are going further to restrict discussion of enslavement in schools. South Carolina's Department of Education has eliminated AP African American Studies classes in high schools, along with Florida, Arkansas. They have also restricted the course. South Carolina's Department of Education says districts can choose to offer it instead as an approved honors course without college credit. Responding to the decision, the NAACP wrote a letter saying, quote, by excluding specific information and knowledge from the classroom, in this case, the history and experiences of Black Americans, SDOE risks depriving South Carolina students from an education that reflects the full breadth of U.S. and South Carolina history and current events. Such actions, which are rooted in the promotion of an inaccurate political viewpoint rather than any credible pedagogy, must be reversed immediately. But the Department of Education said, quote, there has been significant controversy surrounding the course concerning issues directly addressed by South Carolina's General Assembly, and as a result, the department has not approved any new statewide social studies courses. For context, South Carolina passed a law in 2021 that prohibits racist concepts from being taught in K-12 schools. Reacting online, human rights lawyer Qasim Rashid said, quote, a reminder that white supremacy in 2024 isn't only a KKK terrorist wearing a hood, it's also South Carolina Board of Education, removing AP African American Studies from its curriculum, but proudly keeping AP European history. This is how systemic racism continues to thrive today. Trial lawyer Ben Crump tweeted, quote, our brightest students deserve to learn about Black history for college credit. This opportunity shouldn't be taken away. Robby, here's what I find so fascinating about this timing for South Carolina. It's Juneteenth, right? This is a celebration of a key moment in Black history, the final emancipation of the final enslaved people back in Texas. But we know in education that so much of the racist history of America has come out and been challenged in public schools. One of the cases that got consolidated into Brown versus Board of Education, Briggs versus Elliott, comes from Clarendon County in South Carolina. So it is not an accident that even today, we are still fighting the battle in places like South Carolina of having the experiences of Black Americans and, frankly, this really troubling part of American history be understood and be shared in a way that is reflective of a broader American experience. It's you know, Strom Thurmond was a senator from South Carolina for a long time. He eventually, before he died, recanted some of his most racist views, but the Deep South has a problem of not wanting to reckon with its own heritage.
Here's my question. Why can't all of the things you just brought up be taught in the American history course? Why does there have to be a separate African American history course? And that tweet comparing it to European history is a total non sequitur, because we're not talking about an African history course. We're talking about an African American history course. Why is there a separate African American history course? I absolutely agree that African American history is part of American history, and the unsavory aspects of it should be taught and are taught. I mean, the Civil War, Reconstruction, the violations of civil liberties, Jim Crow, Brown v. Board, all of that is taught in American high school history classes, in the AP history classes. If it's not being taught, it should be taught. I'm absolutely for teaching all of the bad stuffs, all the ways we failed African Americans. I don't know why that needs to be in a separate curriculum. There's not a separate Irish immigrants were treated badly too when they came to America. There's a separate Irish American class. And you know what? If a school wants to offer it, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not going to tell the school not to do it. I broadly support giving schools the right to teach, schools to teach whatever they want, and parents then should decide is that the right school for my kid? Do I like the educational environment there? I absolutely wouldn't prohibit them from having a separate course if they really want to, and they're not being prohibited. They're still being allowed to do so. But I don't know why it has to be. It should just be folded in to the American history curriculum. If there's inadequacies in the curriculum and people want to bring up other cases that aren't we've all learned a lot more about the Tulsa massacre in recent years, a certainly undercovered aspect of our history. Sure, put it in the curriculum, but this is for a separate class, and I don't understand why it needs to be separate.
Well, AP classes are not state-based classes. It is not a local education process.
Yeah.
It is the College Board, which is a national private program. So it is a corporate entity that provides a service that states and schools opt into, right? So look at it from that perspective. They went through a very rigorous process with academics and local officials state officials to figure out what makes sense for a variety of different courses. So there were clearly, this private company was meeting a demand for a Black history course. Plenty of people want it, see it, take it. So,
I would much prefer an African history course.
So,
I think that would be really interesting.
So the company that is offering this has effectively been told by South Carolina that they will take all of the other AP classes, but this one, because South Carolina decided it, is not going to count for college credit. Now, ironically, if a college, when you're applying to a college and you put, I took Black history, AP Black history, but by the way, it doesn't count as college credit. Like, I don't know how a college doesn't understand, okay, this is the same course that in every other state counts for college credit. So that's why it's even more convoluted. It seems petty. You can disagree with whether or not it should be existentially offered, but it is part of this corporate package that this school system bought into. And within that, on the week of Juneteenth said, that one, we're not going to do it that way.
Well,
that's petty.
The letter says it was a pilot program for 2 years to pilot this course being an AP course. That 2 years has ended, and they're not approving any new AP courses, including that one. You say that's petty? Okay, maybe it's petty. Again, I don't really care. I think they can offer if it was up to me, seems fine to offer the course for AP credit. I'm not, okay, we want to disagree with that decision, that's fine. I don't really understand why it should or ought to be a separate thing. But, schools can offer whatever courses they want. I'm not going to tell schools what to do, just as I'm not going to tell parents which school they should try to enroll in. They should figure that out. I think, a variety of educational options is actually good, and we can let families pick the best one for them. But this whole, you read a tweet that this is white supremacy, or it's white supremacy not to think there should be a separate course. I think people studying American history should learn about the things that you discussed, and the American history course that everyone takes should cover all those things, not some specialty additional class that only a small subset of people, of the most gifted students, will enroll in. Again, if that's an option, I'm fine with it. That actually doesn't seem the right way to teach the African American history. It seems like it should be a bigger part of the existing curriculum for American history. If it's not, covering racism and Civil War and all of those subjects. Probably the reason why people are skeptical of this course is that if this, recently sprang into existence as a result of, greater public activism over racism, this is why conservatives will say, well, this is like some kind of DEI thing. Rather than a rigorous curriculum. I'm sure that's the criticism. I don't know. It could be a perfectly rigorous, great curriculum. Schools want to offer it. That's great. I certainly think it's important to teach racism, and I think it's so important it should just be part of the normal American history class.
I think you mean teach the history of racism, not teach racism.
Not teach people to be racist. Teach them why racism was certainly a part of our country. That our founding documents, which are these wonderful statements of liberty and democracy and self-governance and the God-given rights of people to speech and freedom of religion and to own property and all of that, were denied to people based on race, and that was absolutely wrong. And it took 50 years to partially reverse that and another 100 years to totally reverse it. Yes, that is absolutely part of American history.
The challenge, right? You're talking about what should happen versus the reality. I took AP American history. I was a history.
It doesn't skip over the unsavory parts of American history. It
certainly ends and wraps up with a lack of understanding of even modern American history. Right?
Well, they run out of time to cover it.
Bingo, right? So that's the idea, is that there's only so much. American history is so many things.
Yeah. Well, European history class is the same way. You run out of time before you get to
there was 3 months in the Habsburg Empire that I'm like, thank you, I could do without.
You're like, Napoleon, got to wrap this up. And then there was World War I, and then there was World War II, and here's today.
Right, exactly. And there's world history. Here's a week on China. So there is a challenge in our education system about how we teach. All of these things would be great to learn in a thoughtful, complex way. That was the point of the College Board having AP Black History, was they recognized American history was so broad, you only got through broad strokes. What is this big chunk of the puzzle of American history that smart, engaged high school students could benefit from understanding, and that a big chunk of that is this reckoning with systemic racism. Add on top of that modern American life and what Black culture is, what different pockets and segments of society, how all of that has blended together. It is actually a very rich program that was developed and discussed and debated politically, academically, in all sorts of ways. It is the only new social studies course developed by the AP. So it's very convenient for South Carolina, again, this week to say they're not going to accept any new social studies courses because AP hasn't had any new ones. It takes a long time to develop this. That's where my pettiness comes in, which is separate from what should or should not happen in in public schools and how we should teach. I'm looking at the reality of how politicians and different individuals are intervening in what is otherwise rigorous academic work and taking away choice. You said you had no problem with people taking this course if they want to. I actually think that's what it is. I think these politicians in South Carolina do not want children and students in South Carolina to have access to this. That's the problem. Let them take it. Let them take it for college credit like kids in all the other states are doing, or instead be petty and say that your students are not going to have the same access as students in other states.
Well, why don't you tell us what you think? We'll be paying attention to that. More Rising right after this.